I've been in the health and fitness industry for quite a long time now, and in that time I've watched a lot of supplements come and go, and it's nearly always the same kind of story. You know, something new arrives, there's some research, sometimes often generally decent research, it gets talked about, it gets hyped up as the thing that your brain has been missing all this time. Everyone starts taking it, and then a few years later the picture quietly kind of changes. You know, the early promises don't seem to hold up, and the whole thing just seems to fade out, and just in time for, you know, the next big thing to arrive. And I've seen that cycle play out more times than I can remember, and it's taught me something that I think is worth more than any single supplement ever promised. The thing that actually work can't be sold to you by a supplement company. You just need to do them. I'm Gavin Eivers, a strength conditioning and rehabilitation coach and cognitive performance specialist. I've spent over 2 decades working with athletes, executives and professionals who want their brain performing optimally. And I want to be straight with you on this one, because there's a lot of money and a lot of hope tied up in the idea that the answer to a sharper brain is something you can buy in a bottle. This isn't a video telling you that supplements are a scam, because some of them have genuine real value, and I'll tell you which ones they are. This is a video about where they actually sit, because for almost everyone I've ever worked with, they've been chasing a small edge from a pill while ignoring the much bigger thing that's sitting right in front of them. So let me start with a thing that's never been debunked. In all the years I've been doing this, through every supplement that came and went, a few things have just never stopped working. Exercise, sleep, good food, managing your stress and your nervous system. Now, nobody has ever come out with a study that quietly retired that, you know, exercise. No one's ever found that movement doesn't really do much for the brain after all. You know, it just keeps holding up year after year, trend after trend. Exercise, nutrition, sleep and nervous system regulation. And out of those, exercise is the one that I put first, if I could only keep one. Not because the others don't matter, they absolutely matter, but because exercise does so much, you know, so reliably across so many parts of how your brain works. Here's what I mean by that. So when you move, you increase blood flow to the brain. You increase chemicals that sharpen your focus and lift your mood. And over time, you raise BDNF, which helps your brain cells grow and connect. It's the closest thing that we have to actually building a better brain. You know, it improves your sleep, it steadies your stress, it protects your thinking as you get older. Now, compare that to a supplement. Even the good ones tend to only do one thing, really. You know, maybe they nudge your focus for a couple of hours. Maybe they top up something that your diet is short on, you know, and that can be really useful, but it's quite narrow, right? Exercise is so broad, you know, it improves the whole system all at once, and it keeps improving the more consistently you do it. So when someone tells me that they're tired and foggy and they've just ordered the latest focus supplement, my honest first thought is nearly always, you're kind of walking past £50 notes to pick up pennies. So caffeine is the obvious one, right? It works, the evidence is solid, and almost everyone's already taking it anyway. And if you pair that with an amino acid called L-theanine, you tend to get the alertness from caffeine without the negative kind of jittery feeling. Another one is omega-3 fats, you know, the kind you get from oily fish. They have good support for your brain and your mood over the long term. And that's one where I think a lot of people genuinely don't get enough from food alone. And then another one is creatine, which a lot of people think is just like a gym supplement for your muscles, but it's turning out to have real promise for the brain too, because I mean, essentially your brain is an energy hungry organ, and creatine helps with energy, simple as that. So those things have a place, especially if someone I'm working with has a deficiency in their diet or is clearly not getting something in their diet. You know, I'll happily suggest one of those because they're well researched. But notice that they are a small number of well-established basics suggested for a reason. You know, I'm not suggesting a drawer full of potions and powders bought on hope. And that's really the distinction that I want you to take from all of this. You know, there's a small group of supplements with real evidence behind them, and then there's everything else. You know, the proprietary blends, the latest mushrooms that stack the promises to rewire your focus. Now, some things have genuinely interesting early studies or a couple of studies, but none of them have anything like the track record of the basics, you know, and a lot of them will be out of fashion in 2 or 3 years time anyway. I take a few things myself, and I'll be honest with you, one of them has barely any real research behind it. And I just take it because I like it. It's lion's mane, mushroom and coffee. I just really like the taste, and maybe it's placebo, but I do feel like I can focus a little bit better after having a cup of that. But honestly, it's more for the taste, and I'm not pretending it's doing anything dramatic. And I think that's a healthier way to think about supplements generally. You know, a few basics that earn their place, maybe one or two that you just enjoy, and no illusion that any of it is going to be transformational. Because here's the thing about how I actually work. You know, I don't reach for supplements by default. When someone comes to me feeling foggy and flat and low in energy and ask what they should be taking, I don't start with a bottle. I start with how they're sleeping, how they're moving, and you know what they're actually eating. And I reckon 9 times out of 10, the answer is in there, not in a supplement. And if I do suggest something, it's specific, you know, and it's based on what their diet is genuinely missing, not a stack handed to everyone who walks through the door because it's kind of on trend. And this leads me to the most practical idea in this whole episode probably, and it's one that changed how I spend my own money. So a few years ago, I added up what I was spending on supplements, and it was over £100 a month, you know, nothing weird, just the kind of stuff that you'll hear advertised on almost any podcast these days. But anyway, I made a decision that I would spend that money somewhere it would be better. So instead of the supplements, I upgraded my food, and I started investing in like properly good olive oil, like really good quality fish, proper organic sockeye salmon rather than the cheapest option, organic fruit and veg, you know, just really good food generally. And here's what surprised me. It worked out cheaper. You know, buying generally good food, the kind that actually supports your brain and body over time, cost me less than that pile of supplements and powders and everything that I had. Maybe I think it was probably about half as much actually. So I was spending less, I was eating better, and I was getting far more out of it than any supplement stack had ever given me. And that's the reframe I'd like to leave you with. You know, if you've got £100 going out every month on supplements, you almost certainly get more for your brain by spending it on better food than you would better pills. Now, nature already packages most of this for you. You know, you get really good omega-3 from the fish, you get caffeine and L-theanine together in something like matcha. You get the raw materials your brain needs from real good quality food. You know, the bottle is expensive. It's kind of a narrow version of something that your plate does really well anyway. So let me kind of pull this together a little bit. So the foundation is exercise, sleep, good food, and managing your stress. That's the part that's never been debunked, and I feel very confident saying that I don't think it ever will be debunked. And exercise is the one I protect above all others. You know, everything else is a layer on top of that. A few supplements have earned their place, you know, caffeine, omega-3, creatine, there's a few others. Use them if they fit your life and your diet. And before you buy anything, just do yourself a favor and spend 10 minutes researching it first. You know, you've got Google and ChatGPT and whatever you need to do. And don't worry too much about the other stuff, you know, because a lot of what's sold as essential today will be forgotten about in a few years' time. And if you're spending real money chasing a sharper brain, look at your food before your supplements. Good food is the cheaper, broader, more reliable version of almost anything that you get from any bottle. The brain you want isn't waiting in a supplement that you haven't found yet. It's built by the things that have been sitting in front of you the whole time. So, you know, move your body, sleep properly, eat real food, look after your nervous system. You do those things and the foundations are so strong that whether or not you take anything on top of them, it barely even matters. That's the part no one's ever managed to debunk, you know, and it's the part nobody can sell you. And if you want a clearer picture of where your own brain performance stands right now, how you're moving, sleeping, eating, and how it's all showing up in your focus and energy, I put together a free 3-minute assessment that looks at exactly that, and I'll put the link in the description below. And if you find this kind of thing interesting and useful, the newsletter is where I go deeper every week, and you can subscribe below, and hopefully I'll see you there.